law matters, and we're here to help you understand it a little bit better. Hi, I'm Debbie Morais, your host and moderator. As we tell you, this program has been dedicated for almost a decade now to making legal topics more accessible to you. We offer clear insights, real-life examples, and practical advice to help you navigate the complexities of the law. A solid understanding of the law puts you in a better place to decide how to protect yourself, your family, and your business when it's applicable. And through these discussions, as we also say, you may find that you are able to handle some issues yourself, and that's great. However, if you decide that you want to enlist outside professional counsel, you'll be better prepared, with our help hopefully, to represent yourself and help the outside counsel to do the best possible job for you. We hope always to save you time, money, and we want you to achieve the best possible results. As always, we always extend our gratitude to Attorney David Bazar of the Bazar and Associates law firm in East Providence, who continues to weigh in on the topics that we discuss. And together, David and I would like to welcome our special guest today, Kevin Nerney, who is the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council. So welcome. So we're happy to have you here. So today, as we had discussed in the last segment, the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust continued today, only specifically now as it pertains to something called a special needs trust, intended for persons who are disabled to preserve their benefits eligibility. We'll get into that. What does that actually mean? And we're also going to talk about Social Security, SSI, SSDI, how they help, what are their benefits, what are their limits, why do you need them? So I think, David, let's start with you first, and then we'll toss the ball to Kevin.
Okay.
So if we start with the Social Security Administration, their benefits like SSI and SSDI, they all have different asset rules. We started to talk about it a little bit. And how does that relate to what we started to talk about last time, too, which was that mapped concept? How does that work?
So if you want to talk about Social Security in terms of disability as opposed to retirement, SSDI would be for someone who worked for a period of time, has enough quarters, as they say, paid in so that they can qualify based on a disability to get Social Security usually earlier based on the disability and the amount of money they paid in. SSI would be more for someone who had not been able to work, has not paid any money in or not enough money into Social Security, but is disabled and would qualify for some benefits. Those are called supplemental security income, and it's a asset-based and no income and income-based benefit.
So what are the differences as it pertains to what we were talking about? What counts for what under that Medicaid Asset Protection Trust?
Yeah, so the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is for Medicaid. This is Social Security. It's a different animal,
yes.
So it doesn't really apply under those circumstances. Usually it's based on a disability. And a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is usually being designed for someone who thinks down the road they may need some Medicaid help to qualify to pay for a nursing home.
Makes sense.
That's a good point. And I just to reiterate something you had said, because SSI, asset-based or income-based,
yep.
There's a means test there, right?
A means
Whereas
test.
SSDI, there's not a means test.
Right.
And so that's really important. It's based on work. For our population, for people with developmental disabilities who are going to receive services through the Division for Developmental Disabilities, they're generally going to qualify for either SSI or SSDI, sometimes based on SSDI based on a parent's work experience, which is also a possibility, something that people should look into. But they're also going to qualify for Medicaid. So we're often, those are Medicaid and SSI, both means tested. And so it's really important that we preserve those benefits for people, and we don't want their income in any given month to be too much, or their assets to be too much in any given month as well. We actually want them to have assets and income.
Right.
We just want to make sure they're not bumped off of those means-tested programs.
And so the Medicaid generally that you would be looking at for someone with developmental disabilities would be medical, and what other benefits?
Yeah, that's great, because people hear Medicaid and they think medical right away. And that is what Medicaid is there for, but it's much more than that. So yes, it is to help with the medical piece that people are going to need to survive. Some people would honestly just die without their Medicaid benefits, but it's also for daily living experiences. So you might need somebody to help you make breakfast, get you to work, or take you to a day program, or assist you with kind of the daily life functions that you might need help with. And so Medicaid's also going to pay for those services as well.
So this is a good point to say, okay, Kevin, what is a special needs trust, and how does it figure into this picture as we're talking about SSDI? How does that fit in?
Great. So I'm going to talk, there's a lot of different trusts, and we'll talk about the different kinds of trusts later, but the main trust that we talk about is what we call a supplemental needs trust. You may hear it called a special needs trust. And they're usually set up by a parent or grandparent that wants to leave assets to an individual after that parent or grandparent is gone. So they'll set up a special needs trust. Why? Because if they leave the assets directly to the individual, that will bump them off of Medicaid and SSI, and they certainly don't want that to happen. So a special needs trust or a supplemental needs trust is a trust which supplements, that's why we call it a supplemental needs trust, it supplements what the person is going to get from Medicaid and SSI. It doesn't replace it, it adds to it.
So you've referred to it at times as something that was federal, and it was intended to preserve the benefit eligibility. How does that all work?
So in very broad strokes,
yes.
SSI and Medicaid, it's about a $2,000 income or asset limitation per individual. It's different if you're married, but I don't want to get into the weeds here. But essentially, $2,000 of income or assets, meaning money in your bank account, you have to be poor to qualify.
Right.
At the same time, the federal government, the state government, everyone, people living in Rhode Island want to work. They want to make money, they want to contribute. So the government who initially put these limitations in place are trying to come up with ways to allow people to have assets, to become employed, to contribute to the community, to be part of their community. And so that's why there are some ways to do that. One of them is to allow a person to have assets through a supplemental or special needs trust. So a parent or grandparent can leave money to a person. It's called a special needs trust or supplemental needs trust because it's different from other trusts in that the person, again, it has to supplement specifically. There has to be very specific wording, and this is why you should always go to an attorney to write these things. It has to have very specific wording which states that it is not intended to replace or supplant Medicaid or SSI. And then the trustee has to have certain powers as well. They have to make sure that the individual who's going to benefit from the trust, the beneficiary, doesn't have any direct access to those funds. And that's the really important part. It's even though it's there for their benefit, they can't access it. So that's why the government says, okay, well, it's not really yours in the way that you can just go to the bank and take out $100. Yeah. You have to go through a trustee.
The discretion on what it can be used for is in the terms of the trust, but in the trustee's power. So the trustee would have the power to decide what to use it for. The beneficiary can't say, hey, I want money for a bigger apartment that wouldn't get paid for otherwise by the state. So it won't interfere with housing or food necessarily if they have other benefits or anything that it would be replacing instead of supplementing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's really important is kind of how the money flows and who really controls it. It's going to be the trustee. The beneficiary has to go to the trustee when they want something and ask for it, and then the trustee is ultimately the one that makes that decision.
Why don't you highlight a few of the things that would be in the supplemental spending idea? That's transportation. Is it recreational activities? Is it therapy? What kinds of things might be considered part of that, Kevin?
Yeah, it's really anything you can think of. But again, there's kind of daily life activities that's going to be paid for by SSI and Medicaid first. So you're going to be supplementing that. If you want to live in a nicer place, yes, it can do that.
It can.
If you want to, transportation's always a big issue. If you want to, use it for bus fare or to buy a vehicle, you can certainly use it for that.
Travel.
Travel for fun. I mean, this is the big thing that most people are looking forward to is how can I use this for fun, for entertainment. So I mentioned like the basic necessities it wouldn't pay for, but if you want to go out to a nice restaurant, for instance, that's beyond the basic necessities.
Computer.
So a computer, yeah, anything like that. But you know, the issue comes with, I want to go out to this fancy restaurant tonight. Well, I have to go to a trustee and ask them for funds. So there are some limitations. Yeah, if anything that you're going to utilize the funds from the trust for, you have to go to the trustee and the trustee is ultimately going to be the one that makes that decision.
So we had talked about in the last segment the idea that these maps are irrevocable. How does that pertain to special needs? Is this also irrevocable?
So the basic one I'm talking about right now is a revocable trust for the parent or grandparent that sets it up. Okay, so the parents set it up. They can change it anytime they want. They can get rid of it. They can whatever they want to do. One parent dies. Usually they're both named in it. The other parent can do whatever they want with those funds. They can add to it. They can take out of it. They can get rid of it anytime they want to. When the second parent dies, then it becomes irrevocable. Now it's set in stone. So it's a revocable trust when the parents or grandparents make it. It becomes irrevocable upon both of their deaths.
I will add one thing that differs from an attorney's point of view when we're drafting these. Many times we will draft it in their own revocable trust, the parent's revocable trust. So it springs, so to speak, into action when they die and it gets set up as part of their trust. And that point would be irrevocable because they're not here to change it anymore. But what they can put in it, which you can't do with other first-party trust or other types of things, is they can say what happens to whatever's left over in that trust when the beneficiary dies. So
yeah, really important, especially for when people are deciding what kind of trust they want to use. They want to make sure that when their child or children pass, that those funds go specifically how they want it to go.
Right.
And I do want to point out that it's really important. These revocable trusts, if you have a child with a disability, it's not only for that child. If you have multiple children, you can set up a trust that benefits everybody. The section for the child with a disability will be written a little bit different, and that's where that special language is going to be in there.
Good to know. And David just touched on something that was going to be my next question anyway, which is, how is it funded? Tell us about the first party versus the third party funding. How does that set up and what are the differences?
It's the parent or grandparent or whoever sets up the trust. It's their funds. The funds were never the individual with the disability, so that's why the parent or grandparent, after the trust is completed, can direct how those funds go. A first-party trust, meaning it is the individual with the disabilities funds to begin with. Those are set up a little bit differently, and there's two different kinds of first-party trusts that you can have in Rhode Island. One is, we call it a D4A trust because it's IRS code something D4A. So we just say D4A trust. That's specifically allowed under IRS code, obviously, and the individual with the disability can kind of help set up that trust. The other kind in Rhode Island is called a pooled trust. And what pooled trusts are is an organization that runs it will pool everyone's assets just for investment purposes. So they're not actually mixing your money up with everyone else's. Your money is still your money, but they're pulling it for investment purposes so that those funds can grow. And what happens at the end of each of those is kind of different. There's what we call a Medicaid clawback. That sounds like a really bad thing, and in a lot of people's opinion, it's a kind of a bad thing. For anything that Medicaid paid out over the individual's life, Medicaid has the first right to say, hey, we paid for hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of benefits for you. We'd like that back now. A pooled trust, there can be some Medicaid clawback. It could also go to the organization that runs it if it's a nonprofit organization as well.
What are the nonprofit organizations that do these pooled?
The only one I'm aware of in Rhode Island is CPNRI, the Community Provider Network of Rhode Island, operates a pooled trust. There's, I believe, Plan of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. I'm not sure if they're operating in Rhode Island right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
They're the only other one that I'm even aware of. So CPNRI is the only one I'm aware of currently operating in Rhode Island.
So you're both lawyers. How would this process set up? Would they first be speaking with you perhaps just because they're doing the overall trust. We talked about the revocable ones, the irrevocable ones, mapped. Now special needs trust, would that be something that
Have you moved to a first party trust now? Are you still on a third party trust?
Well, actually, when someone's just looking to set up the trust and they don't know how exactly, so it would always be the
if
third.
If it's a parent or
initially.
a grandparent, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to, 10 out of 10 times, they ought to be talking to an attorney to figure out what they can do and how it should be drafted.
So they might go to you first.
Right.
Now, when it comes to the portion that is the special needs trust and they might need the pooled piece, would you be involved with that? How might that dovetail, or how does that play out?
So you have to go to an attorney. It gets
not a
so
do-it-yourself.
complicated. No, it gets really, really complicated, really, really fast, depending on what you want and how you want assets to flow after your death. What kind of benefits you're looking to maintain. So absolutely see an attorney. We just want to give you some really basic information about the different kinds of trusts, and so. Yes, as soon as someone's thinking about it, the first thing you want to do is call an attorney, because they're going to have to map things out. This isn't like, oh yeah, I've got a trust right here, just sign it. And it's every single trust is really, really individually written. It's very specific to the person. And I do want to point this out because I've had a lot of people come to me and say, well, I don't have any assets to leave behind. Well, do you own a home? Well, yeah, I bought it for $200,000 10 years ago. I still owe $100,000 on it right now. Okay, but that was 10 years ago. Now it's worth $350,000, and you only owe $100,000. You have $250,000 in assets. You do have.
Good to know.
People have assets they're not aware of, and it's really important that they protect those assets for their children in the future.
Might it happen that people who have developmental disabilities might be at the council office or call your office and say, I need to do something to help my kids. I don't really know what to do. And might that be the place that a conversation initially
Yeah, I do. I talk to people all the time. And generally, depending on where they are in the state, I'll send them to different attorneys that specialize in this. I definitely only send them to attorneys that really know the difference between the first party trust, third party trust, pooled trust. And also one other really important instrument is my favorite, called ABLE accounts.
Take it away.
So a trust, like I said, they're great because you can put as much money as you want into them. The different kinds of trusts are all taxed differently. So again, you need to talk to an attorney about this. But the main thing about trusts of any kind is it's a trust, which means there's a trustee, which means the individual has to go to that trustee when they want something. ABLE accounts are they're a special kind of account which allows an individual to have access to some funds without having to go to a trustee. They're called ABLE accounts. They were set up under the education plan. A lot of people save, what's it called? The
529.
529 plan. So this is 529A under the IRS 529 plans. And it's specifically for people with disabilities. If you have a disability and you qualify, you can open up an ABLE account. ABLE accounts, you can have up to, in Rhode Island, $395,000 in an ABLE account. At $100,000, your SSI is suspended. Not your Medicaid, but SSI is suspended. At $90,000, you'll get a notice saying, hey, you're approaching $100,000. What for some people, if they're going to have enough money, the income off of those accounts may be more than you're getting from SSI. So they may say, I'm not worried about it. Let's keep growing it. For other people, they may say, no, I want to keep it under that $100,000 to maintain my SSI and Medicaid. It's an investment account, but you get to choose how to invest in it. So there are 6 different investment areas. You can say, I want to be very aggressive. I'm 22 years old. I'm going to be around a while. I know the stock market over the next 30 years is going to go up, so put it almost all in stocks. You could say, I'm a little bit older. I want to be a little bit more, cautious. You could do half stocks, half bonds, maybe a little bit in a checking account. And then you could be very cautious and say, mostly treasury bonds and the rest of it in a checking account. From the investment side, there's also, like I said, a checking account side. And the checking account side is what the individual has access to. The investment side, they don't have direct access to, but twice a year you can move funds from one to the other, or you can set up an automatic movement. So for instance, monthly movement. So for instance, if you have $20,000 on the investment side. You could say every month I want $100 to go over to the checking account side. Now that person has access to that $100 a month every month. They can go to dinner without going to the trustee, right? They can take an Uber to go see a friend. They can take a music class that they want to take. So it's really beneficial to the individual to have direct access to
and they
those
get
funds.
to figure out how quickly it can go if they spend it all at one time.
Yeah, we see a lot of people with varying abilities to handle money, just like in anyone else in the world. And so for some people, they want to limit how much they have access to every month. For some people, they want a parent or a relative or somebody else to actively help them manage the funds. And with ABLE accounts, you have a wide discretion over allowing an individual to either view the account or help you manage the funds directly.
And where can people set up an ABLE account? Are there different places that you can do that?
Yep. Each state has an ABLE. You can only have one ABLE account, and it can only be in one state. I do know somebody that moved here from Tennessee with a Tennessee ABLE account. They said, I want to open one in Rhode Island as well. You can't do that. It's only
can
one
you move
state.
it?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. But what Rhode Island does is they're in a conglomerate of, I believe, 24 states. Again, just like a pool trust, you get a bigger, when you're investing more money, you get a larger return. So they're kind of all pooling assets for that reason. Rhode Island, the Treasurer's Office runs it, and I believe it's www.risavewithable.com. And you can register. You can do everything online. And it's self-certification. Do you have a disability? You just check a box that says, yes, I do. Treasurer's Office has no interest in you sending the medical records. They don't want you to do that. And then you just recertify every year. Everything's automatically sent to the IRS and to SSA. And you need to have proof that you have a disability in case they ever come knocking. But you don't have to provide that upfront.
So you've made it sound like it's fairly straightforward and simple. What are the barriers? Why wouldn't everyone want to ask about this and do this? And it seems like reflexive.
That's a great question. Because it's the individual's money and it is their account, Medicaid still, when the person dies, Medicaid gets to freeze the account, say, hey, since you opened this account, we have paid $200,000 worth of Medicaid for you. We want to take that back. We are actively working through the legislature right now to remove that clawback in Rhode Island. Other states have already done it, so we know it can be done. I think that we can get it done this year. I'm really hoping, because that is the biggest barrier. People hear, oh, I'm putting money into my child's account, but if they pass away, Medicaid's going to take what's left. Especially depending on the child's age or if they have health issues. So if you're young and without health issues, there's really nothing to worry about. Use those funds. It's going to improve someone's life. So I really recommend ABLE accounts. I particularly like using them with a trust. So the trust can take the bulk of the funds right off the bat. And then every year the trustee can take, I believe right now it's $19,000 per year you can put into an ABLE account. That's the other limitation, it's only so much per year. So I believe it's $19,000 that anyone can put in. And if the individual is employed, then they can put an additional around $15,000 of their own income in every year. So once that money's in there, and once we get rid of the clawback, it really, I would say everyone should have one if you have a disability. I really think it's a great way to have an investment account, to have direct access to funds, to really be able to be part of your community. They're awesome.
Yeah, I like it.
So you've spoken about how often people with disabilities want to work, can work, sometimes they're self-employed, they make money. How does that impact on their decisions about where that money goes so that it doesn't hit a trigger that will, as you mentioned, sometimes impact negatively on them or perceived to be negatively, like they're not going to have they'll have their health care, they won't have their SSDI?
So it was, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, Rhode Island has what we call a Medicaid buy-in program. It wasn't the ideal one. We had people come and testify up at the legislature that they had to give up promotions at work or taking on additional work, because then they'd be making too much money, they'd get knocked off their benefits. We changed that. In Rhode Island, we now have something called Ticket to Work as a Medicaid buy-in program. So you can make more than $2,000 now and not lose your Medicaid. You just have to pay a portion of the premium. And the more you make, the higher the premium you have to pay, but it allows you to make more money and keep more money as well. I don't think that really answers your question directly, but...
Well, it does, in a way. Do you find that people who are making money, maybe even more than I don't know, I'd like to see that they make more than $2,000, but are they conscious of that, concerned about that, and where they can put the money so that they have it for the rainy day or when they can't work 5 years from now or whatever? Are there ways for them, and who guides them to reallocating where those funds should go?
So if you're receiving services through the Division for Developmental Disabilities, you should see what we call a benefits counselor. They can help you do that, or reach out to an attorney that specializes. Again, there's so many different things that you have to consider when you're thinking about building assets. The ABLE account, in my opinion, is a great way to store assets, and the government pretends they're not there, which is fantastic. But you do want to be careful about if I'm making more than $2,000 a month, how is that going to affect my SSI and my Medicaid? And so it is really an important decision for people to make, and something you should definitely talk to an expert in the field on.
What other things do we need to know about how the Special Needs Trust works in terms of who handles the money initially, who's likely to be chosen to handle as trustee? What do we need to know about that? Is it always your older sister who can take care of you? Is it your spouse? How do people make those choices?
It's, again, it's so individualized.
Sure.
And for good reason, because it's a trustee. The word trust is right in that word, right? You have to trust this person to, to adequately handle those funds, to distribute them properly for the beneficiaries' quality of life. And so if that's why you're leaving behind, you really have to trust somebody to do that. There are trustees that aren't relatives, like some banks are trustees, for instance. Depending on the amount of assets you have, I generally prefer someone that you know and trust to handle those funds. But that's a great question, and it really is different. So sometimes it's an uncle, sometimes it's an older sibling, sometimes it's a younger sibling, sometimes it's a family friend that has been there the whole time.
When we're drafting a plan, part of what we're doing is digging in on who the people are that could help and what are their skills and relationship. Oftentimes, the concern might be this person would be the great ideal choice, but they won't get along and there'll be a conflict and they don't want to worry about dealing with the particular beneficiary. So you jump to the next one. And that is part of the planning process. And one of the most important parts of the process is determining who's going to be the trustee and who's going to be in the best position to both invest the money, but also deal with the beneficiary.
I know we're about ready to wrap up, but can that trustee change? We've talked about it in previous segments. Can that beneficiary be changed?
Not the beneficiary as much as the trustee.
I mean the trustee, excuse me, the trustee.
Yeah, and again, in a revocable trust, the people who set up the trust can change it anytime they want. Once the trust is already set, it gets a little bit more difficult, but sometimes it's written in there that the beneficiaries could go to a judge.
We have rules that say what they can do.
Good to know. That was a good distinction. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We thank you for tuning in to The Law Matters. We hope that this has been helpful to you, and we hope you'll continue to stay tuned. It matters to you. Thank you.